Howdy, howdy, howdy. This is Matt Hesser with Dimensional Nomad Games, and welcome to Magic Adventures in FNM Commander Episode 6. Today we're going to go ahead and talk about the games that took place at the Xeus and Apollos local game store, which is pretty much the only game store I'm playing at right now, that took place on August 25th, 2017. There was actually a good number of us, plus a bunch of people got a hold of the new Commander 2017 products, so we got to see some of those games, some of those commanders at the game. So I was excited for that. But let's go ahead and take a look at all of the commanders that were played that night. First, we have my deck, Animar Soul of Elements. For blue, red, green, you get a 1/1 legendary creature elemental with protection from white and black. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you get a +1/+1 counter on Animar, and then creature spells you cast cost one less for each counter on Animar. Then we had Surok Dragonclaw. For 2 green, blue, red, you get a 6/6 legendary creature human warrior with flash. He can't be countered, and creature spells you control can't be countered, and other creatures you control have trample. Then we had Tajik, Blade of the Legions. 2 red, white for a 2/2 legendary creature human soldier. Tajik, Blade of Legions is indestructible. Always fun on a commander. And he has a battalion, so whenever he and 2 or more other creatures you control attack, he gets +5/+5 until end of turn. We had Wart the Raid Mother, which is 4 and 2 hybrid red green for a 3/3 legendary creature Goblin Shaman. When Wart the Raid Mother enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 red and green Goblin Warrior creature tokens, and then each red and green instant or sorcery you control has Conspire, which means as you cast a spell, you may tap 2 untapped creatures you control that share a color with it, and then you may put a copy of that spell onto the stack. Then we only had one the Scarab God commander this time, which was fun. It's been really popular of late, but this is the first week, this is the first week we haven't had multiples of this particular god. So the Scarab God is 3, a blue and a black for a 5/5 legendary creature god, which says at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses X life and you scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. And then for 2, a blue and a black, you can exile target creature card from a graveyard and create a token that's a copy of it, except that it's a 4/4 black zombie. So let's say you exiled a Chroma, who's normally a 6/6 angel. Instead, it would turn into a 4/4 black zombie with all the other stuff on the Chroma. And then also, when when the Scarab God dies, you return it to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. Then Edgar Markov, so our first Commander 2017 commander, who is 3 red, white, black for a 4/4 legendary creature Vampire Knight. With Eminence, whenever you cast another vampire spell, if Edgar Markov is in the command zone or on the battlefield, create a 1/1 black vampire creature token. He has first strike and haste, and whenever Edgar Markov attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on each vampire you control. So it was nice to see Commander 2017 getting some representation. Then we had Thraxamundar, 4, a blue, black, and red for a 6/6 legendary creature zombie assassin. With haste, whenever he attacks, defending player sacrifices a creature, and whenever a player sacrifices a creature, he gets a +1/+1 counter. Then Nazan, Revered Bladesmith. So this is our cat deck Commander 2017 creature. 4, a green and a white for a 5/4 legendary creature Cat Artificer. When he enters the battlefield, search your library for an equipment and reveal it. If you reveal a card named Hammer of Nazan, you can put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put that card in your hand. Then shuffle your library. And whenever an equipped creature you control attacks, you may tap target creature defending player controls. So good to see cats getting represented. Then we had Send Triplets, 2 white, blue, black for a 3/3 legendary artifact creature human wizard. At the beginning of your upkeep, choose target opponent. This turn, that player can't play spells or activated abilities and plays with their hand revealed, and you can play cards from that player's hand. Then we had 2 different people playing the Ur Dragon, so dragons definitely got represented this week. 4, and then all 5 colors for a 10/10 legendary creature dragon avatar with Eminence. As long as he is in the command zone or battlefield, your dragons cost 1 less. Flying, whenever 1 or more dragons you control attack, draw that many cards, then you may put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield. Then we had Elves getting represented in the form of Azuri, Renegade Leader. For 1 and 2 green, you get a 2/2 legendary creature Elf Warrior. With 1 green, regenerate another target elf, so he can't regenerate himself. And then 2 green, green, green. So elf creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain scramble. So it basically has overrun built onto him. Then we had Ashling the Pilgrim, 1 in a red. You get a 1/1 legendary creature, Elemental Shaman, with 1 in a red. Put a +1/+1 counter on him, and then this is the third time the ability resolves this turn. Remove all of those counters from him and deal that much damage to each creature and each player. We had the return of Zur the Enchanter for 1, a white, blue, and black. We had a 1/4 legendary creature, Human Wizard, with flying, and whenever he attacks, you may search your library for an enchantment card with converted mana cost 3 or less and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. So, and then we had Sharoom the Hegemon, 3 white, blue, black for a 5/5 legendary artifact creature Sphinx with flying, and when it enters the battlefield, return target artifact from your graveyard to the battlefield. We had Gisela, Blade of Gold Knight for 4 red, white, white. You get a 5/5 legendary creature angel with flying and first strike. If a source would deal damage to an opponent or something an opponent controls, it takes double damage. And if you or one of your permanents would take damage, it takes half that damage, prevent half that damage rounded up. Then we had Kali of the Vast, 1 white, black, red for a 2/2 legendary creature human cleric with flying, and whenever Kali of the Vast attacks an opponent, you may put an angel, demon, or dragon creature card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking that opponent. And then we had an Alicia who smiles at death for 2 in a red. You get a 3/2 legendary creature human warrior with first strike, and whenever she attacks, you may pay a hybrid 2 hybrid black white. If you do, return target creature card with power 2 or less from the graveyard to the battlefield, tapped and attacking. So lots of different commanders, 4 different decks from the Commander 2017 cards. Lots of fun. Definitely had a good representation for Esper in this group. Let's see, like 1, 2, 3 different Esper commanders. Yeah, just a bunch of really interesting decks. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first game. Oh, by the way, the pairings. So we had 6 games of 3 commanders for each pod. It was Animar versus Surok versus Tajik, Wart versus the Scarab God versus Edgar Markov, Thrax Mundar versus Nazan versus Sem Triplets, both Dragon decks and Azuri, Ashling versus Zur versus Sharoom, Gisela versus Kalia versus Alicia. So let me know who you think won each of those games. We'll take a look at the end of this round. All right, so let's get into the first round. So the beginning of the game is pretty standard. We just all played a bunch of lands. Not much happened until turn 3, when finally we were able to start playing things. So the Sirach player was the one who went first. He started off with a Nissan Steward of Elements for 1. So Nissan Steward of Elements is green, blue, and X for an X loyalty Planeswalker Nissa, whose abilities are +2, Scry 2, and then 0 abilities. Look at the top card of your library. If it is a land card or a creature card with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of loyalty counters on Nissa, you may put that card onto the battlefield. And -6 is untap up to 2 target lands you control, and they turn into 5/5 elemental creatures with flying and haste until end of turn. They're still lands. I think that ability is kind of weak, but the Scry 2 is really good. And look at the top card. If it's a land, put it in your hand, or land or a creature with less less CMC than loyalty, put it into play. Seems pretty strong. All right, so then our Tajik player played a Worn Power Stone, which is 3 mana for an artifact that comes into play tapped and then taps for 2 mana. Basically, it's a Tired Soul Ring. Costs 2 more and comes into play tapped. And then I was able to play Animar Soul of Elements. Then we moved on to turn 4. Forgot to zoom out. Sorry. All right, so turn 4, Tajik was able to enter the battlefield. And then I was able to play a couple of things. I played a Beast Caller Savant, which is 1 and a green for a 1/1 creature elf shaman ally with haste. And tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, but you can only use this mana to cast creature spells. And then Vizier of the Menagerie for 3 and a green. You get a 3/4 creature Naga Cleric. That lets you look at the top card of your library, and if it's a creature card, you can cast it, and you can spend your mana any way you want to cast those creatures. So really nice. I was getting some decent work out of that. Our poor Nissa just was doing scrying, trying to get something. He wasn't doing much at this point, though. All right, so Tajik then played Assemble the Legion, which is an amazing card. Love this card. It's 3 red white for an enchantment that says at the beginning of your upkeep, put a muster counter on Assemble the Legion. Then put a 1/1 red and white soldier creature token with haste onto the battlefield for each muster counter on Assemble the Legion. So really good card. Really scales well with Commander. And then I was able to get out a few more cards. So I got Thassa, God of the Sea, which is 2 and a blue for a 5/5 legendary enchantment creature god with indestructible. And it's not a creature unless you have 5 devotion or more to blue. At the beginning of your upkeep, scry 1, and 1 and a blue target creature you control can't be blocked this turn. Really good for getting that damage in. But I really like the scry. This was mostly what it's in the deck for. Shaman of the Great Hunt is 3 and a red for a 4/2 creature orc shaman with haste. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And then it also has Ferocious. So for 2 and then 2 hybrid blue green, you get to draw a card for each creature you control with power 4 or greater. Then I used my Phyrexian Ingester, which is 6 on a blue, to get a 3/3 creature beast with imprint. When Phyrexian Ingester enters the battlefield, you may exile target non-token creature, and then it gets plus X plus Y, where X is the exiled creature's power and Y is its toughness. So I used that to kill off the Tajik. Since the Tajik's indestructible, the exile was really nice for that. And then I had a bit of damage on the board, so I started swinging. Unfortunately, that meant that our Sirach player answered on the next turn with Blasphemous Act. Now, Blasphemous Act is 8 and a red for a sorcery that says Blasphemous Act costs 1 less to cast for each creature on the battlefield, and then it deals 13 damage to each creature. Brutal! At that point, he had just enough mana plus just enough creatures in play to just completely wipe the board. So that reset me, reset the Tajik player. Um, Unfortunately, Tajik player gets a bunch of tokens every turn, so he was definitely in a good place. He then played Sword of War and Peace, which is 3 mana for an artifact equipment. The equipped creature is +2/+2 and has protection from red and white. And then whenever the equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, the sword deals damage to that player equal to that player's hand size, and you gain life equal to your hand size. And then it also has equip 2. Really strong. Um, Especially since at this point the Sirach player had only played 2 things, so he still had a full hand. I'm usually dumping my hand with Animar, so it wasn't as good swinging at me, but definitely good for swinging at the Sirach player at this point. All I could do was recast Animar and hope for the best. All right, so we moved on to that was turn 6. So we're moving on to turn 7. Whoop, there we go. Turn 7. All right. So the Sirach player finally got another creature in play. It was Shaman of the Forgotten Ways, which is 2 and a green for a 2/3 creature human shaman that taps to add 2 mana in any combination of colors to your mana pool, but you can only use it to cast creature spells. So it's kind of like my Shaman of the Forgotten Ways, or sorry, my Beast Caller Savant, but it's 1 more mana. It costs 1 more, and it makes 1 more. So it's actually really good. I'm thinking about putting it into Animar. I just have to find a slot. Anyway, it also has Formidable. So for 9 and green, you can tap to have each player's life total become the number of equal to the number of creatures they control. And you can only use this if you have a total of 8 or more power. So it's not hard to pull off either. He then took a gamble, which is 1 red for a sorcery that says search your library for a card, put it in your hand, then discard your card at random, and then shuffle your library. Really good. Then Tajik came back, and keep in mind he's still making tokens with that Assemble the Legion, so he's just spewing out tokens, which means he's going to have enough creatures to use his battalion ability. He still has the Sword of War and Peace out there, and so he's swinging with his little tokens. I tried to ramp out by playing Oracle of Moldiah. For 3 and a green, you get a 2/2 creature elf shaman that says you can play an additional land each turn. You can play with the top card of your library revealed, and if it's a land card, you can play it if you've still got land plays. All right. So, moving on. Turn 8. Our Sirach player seems to be playing lots of planeswalkers. At this point, he played Ral Zarek. Ral Zarek is 2 blue-red for a 4 loyalty planeswalker Ral. +2 ability is tap target permanent, then untap another target permanent. And his -2 is he deals 3 damage to target creature or player. And then his alt is -7, flip 5 coins, taking each extra turn for each one that comes up heads. And then he played Master Biomancer, which is 2 green-blue for a 2/4 creature elf wizard. Each other creature you control enters the battlefield with a number of additional +1/+1 counters on it equal to Master Biomancer's power, and as a mutant in addition to its other types. Holy crap, this thing gets out of hand quickly. Our Tajik player then plays a Fiend Hunter, which is 1 white for a 1/3 creature human cleric. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile another target creature, and then when Fiend Hunter leaves the battlefield, you return that exiled creature to your hand. Now, I counseled that he should get rid of the Master Biomancer because that thing will get out of hand, especially in green, red, blue. He's going to throw out creatures. They're just going to get bigger and bigger, especially if all you do is just clone the damn thing, because then they each make other things bigger. But no, he decided to get rid of my Oracle. Because, my Oracle is so threatening. I mean, if I hadn't been playing a bunch of creatures, he probably would have been less threatened. But I personally, this is where the biggest play mistake of this game. But, it's all live and let learn. So I lost my Oracle, but I instead played Selvala Heart of the Wilds, which is 1 green for a 2/3 legendary creature elf scout. When another creature enters the battlefield, if it's the biggest creature that its controller draws, and then I can pay a green and tap to add X mana in any combination of colors to my mana pool where X is the greatest power among creatures I control. So it's kind of a ramp spell as long as I start getting bigger and bigger creatures. Which with Animar, every time I play a creature, he gets bigger. But still, that Master Biomancer, oh, brutal. Anyway, so that was that turn. And I'm hoping that with Selvala out there, I can start getting some of my other creatures out there, start getting something that can answer this Master Biomancer. Unfortunately, it was too late because on the next turn, turn 9, he played Progenitor Mimic targeting the Master Biomancer. Now, Progenitor Mimic is 4 green-blue for a 0/0 creature shapeshifter that enters the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except that it also gains, at the beginning of your upkeep, if this creature isn't a token, create a token that's a copy of this creature. Holy crap, it's bonkers. So good. So, I mean, the Tajik player, he's still got his tokens. He's still swinging pretty wide. He's still doing pretty good. Uh, so his response is playing Steadfast Cathar, which is 1 white for a 2/1 creature human soldier that when it attacks gets +0/+2, so turning into a 2/3. Warmind Infantry for 2 and a red for a 2/3 creature elemental soldier with battalion that when you attack with this and at least 2 other creatures, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Gets to my turn. Now I'm really hoping to stabilize at this point. So I play Urbrass the Hidden, which is 3 red for a 4/4 legendary creature praetor. My creatures have haste. My opponent's creatures enter the battlefield tapped. So that should save me for a bit of damage from the tokens, but not from the tokens that are already out. But all the new ones that are coming out, yes, they have haste, but they'll be tapped. Great Whale, let me untap, get a bit of extra mana, because it is 5 blue for when Great Whale enters play, untap up to 7 lands. So he cost me less than 7, so I was able to cast him, ended up with some surplus mana, untapped all my lands. Then I was able to play Void Winter, which is 9 mana for an 11/9 creature Eldrazi that says your opponents can't cast spells with even converted mana costs, and they can't block with creatures with even converted mana costs, which includes 0. So tokens can't block. Get out just a little bit more damage, hoping to win. Unfortunately, I knew that with Progenitor Mimic out there, 2 Biomancers, another Biomancer coming out. Oh, and I was right. On the next turn, the Sirach player played Gruul Rage Beast with is 5 a red and a green for a 6/6 creature beast. When it or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, that creature fights target creature in opponent's control. And because he had 3 Biomancers out at this point, the Gruul Rage Beast came into play with 10 +1/+1 counters. So it nuked my poor Void Winnower. He then ulted his Ralzeric in an attempt to take a whole bunch of extra turns. He didn't get a whole bunch of extra turns. He only got one. But that was enough because the next turn he played Insurrection, which is 5 red, 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 so 8. So he needed to kill the Eldrazi in order to play it. Sorcery, untap all creatures and gain control of them until end of turn. And they gain haste until end of turn. So he took all of our creatures and beat us with them. And that was game number 1. It was very sad. But, Insurrection's a fun way to lose. And I almost had him. If the Biomancer had been there, I feel I could have stabilized. But, that's the game. All right, so do you remember the pairings? You remember who won? So, first game, Pod. Surak is our winner. Pod 2, we had the Wart. Raid Mother won. Pod 3 was won by Send Triplets. Pod 4 was Elves beating Dragons. So Zuri won. Pod 3 was Zur the Enchanter. And then Pod 4, our winner was Gisela. Really fun games. Even though I lost, I still enjoyed it. Alright, so let's go ahead and move on to game number 2. For our pairings in game number 2, we have Animar versus Thrax versus the Dragon. We had Pod 2 is Tajik versus Sharoom versus Alicia. Pod 3, we had Edgar Markov versus the Dragon versus Nazan. So we had a full Commander 2017 pod between vampires, vampires, dragons, and cats. Although it's more equipment based than cat based. Well, whatever. It was still a cat deck. And then we had Pod 4 is Send Triplets versus Sirach versus Azuri. Pod 5 was Zur versus Gisela versus Wart. And Pod 6 was Kalia versus the Scarab God versus Ashling. Alright. So let's go ahead and get into this game. Turn 1's pretty simple. Everyone played a land. Turn 2, that's when we all started ramping out. Who went first? Thrax did. So Thrax played a Demur Signet, which is 2 mana for an artifact that says pay 1, tap, and add blue-black to your mana pool. I played Beast Hauler Savant. And then the other player, Alicia, played a not Alicia. The Dragon played a Fellwar Stone, which is 2 mana for an artifact that taps for any color mana your opponent's lands can produce. Turn 3 continued the ramping capabilities. Thraxmundar played Kefnit's Monument, which is 3 mana for a legendary artifact. Blue creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, and whenever you cast a creature spell, target creature and opponent controls doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. I played Animar, and then our dragon player continued to ramp out by playing Herald's Horn, which is 3 mana for an artifact that says when it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Creature spells you cast of the chosen type cost 1 less to cast. And at the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. If it is a creature of the chosen type, you may reveal it and put it into your hand. So he's getting more mana, making things cheaper. He's looking up the shape very well. So turn 4, our Thraxmundar player played Anger. Anger is 3 and a red for a 2/2 creature incarnation with haste. And if it's in the graveyard and you control a mountain, your creatures have haste. I continued to do my own ramping with Cloud of Fairies, which is 1 and a blue for a 1/1 creature fairy. With flying, and when it enters the battlefield, you can untap up to 2 lands. It also has cycling for 2, which means you can pay 2, discard it to draw a card. I use it because it lets me untap my lands. It basically turns into a ramp spell with Animar, since usually it only costs me 1. This time it cost me 2, but that's okay. It gave me a counter, which then let me play Selvala, Heart of the Wilds as well. And then our first dragon entered the battlefield, which was Ojitai, Soul of Winter. For 5, a white and a blue, you get a 5/6 legendary creature dragon with flying and vigilance. And whenever a dragon you control attacks, tap target non-land permanent and an opponent controls. That permanent doesn't untap during its controller's next unstep step. Trying to remember what he tapped with it, because he couldn't target Animar. I completely don't remember what he tapped. He tapped something, though, because otherwise, why not? Oh, no, sorry. I completely messed. His is attack. I'm thinking the monument, which was on cast. So he didn't tap anything yet. I'm getting ahead of myself. All right, so speaking of getting ahead, let's go ahead and move on to turn 5. where the Thraxamundar player played Marchesa's Emissary, which is 3 and a blue for a 2/2 human rogue with hexproof and dethrone. And then I played an Ulvenwald Hydra, which is 4 green green for a star creature Hydra with reach. Its power and toughness equal to the number of lands you control, and when it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a land and put it on the battlefield tap. Then shuffle your library. I then played a Vesvin Shapeshifter, which is 3 blue blue for a 0/0 creature shapeshifter that comes into play as a copy of a creature. It also has at the beginning of your upkeep, you may turn this creature face down, and you can also morph it for 1 and a blue and still copy something when it morphs. So it's kind of like something you can change every turn if you wanted to for another 1 and a blue. Then the second dragon enters the play, which is the Utvar Hellkite. 6 red for a 6/6 creature dragon with flying, and whenever a dragon you control attacks, create a 6/6 red dragon creature token with flying. So let's say you attack with 1, you only get 1 dragon. But if you attack with 6 dragons, you get 6 more dragons. So he gets really out of control. So at this point, this is when Ojutai attacked. He tapped down something of mine. I think it was one of the Hydras. Got himself a token because he attacked. And I was kind of getting worried at this point, but I had a fair bit of mana, so I knew that I could recover fairly easily. So moving on to the next turn. This is turn 6. Our Thraxamundar player is continuing to move into the game and get ready to, once Thrax comes out, it'll get really big. So he played Hero's Blade, which is 2 mana for an artifact equipment. Equipped creatures +3/+2. Whenever a legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach hero. Excuse me. You may attach Hero's Blade to it, and then it equips for 4. So in his case, Thraxamundar is his main win condition, so it'll auto-equip to Thrax. He then used Oblivion Strike, which is 3 and a black for a sorcery with Devoid that exiles target creature. He exiled the Utvar Hellkite because he did not need a whole bunch of dragons coming to play. Because next turn, assuming he didn't play any more dragons, he would have gotten 3 more dragons. 6 flying dragons. That's just insane. Unfortunately, on my turn, I was able to play a whole bunch of stuff. So I played a Solemn Simulacrum, which is 4 mana for a 2/2 artifact creature golem that when it enters the battlefield, search your library for basic land, put it into play, tapped. And then when it dies, draw a card. When the Solemn dies, not the land. And then I played Myojin of Seeing Winds, which is 7 mana, 7 blue, so 10 mana total for a 3/3 legendary creature spirit. When it comes into play, put a divinity counter on it if you played it from your hand. Then it's indestructible as long as it has a divinity counter on it. And you can remove a divinity counter from it to draw a card for each permanent you control. I had 14 permanents, so I immediately removed that divinity counter to draw 14 cards. And then I played Peregrine Drake, which is 4 and a blue for a 2/3 creature Drake with flying. When it enters the battlefield, untap 5 lands. So at this point, it only cost me 1. So I netted 4 mana. Then I played a Great Whale, which was 5 and 2 blue to untap 7 lands. So I netted 5 mana with this guy. So at this point I had an extra 9 mana. So I tapped 1 more mana to play Primal Surge. Primal Surge is 8 and 2 green for a sorcery that says, exile the top card of your library. If it is a permanent card, you may put it onto the battlefield. And if you do, repeat this process. So as long as the card you flip over is a permanent, it goes into play and you do it again and again and again. There are only 2 non-permanent cards in my deck, which is Primal Surge and Weird Harvest. I had the Weird Harvest in hand, so I played this spell, turned my entire deck over into play, and then swung for lethal because I have a bunch of ways to get haste. Well, technically 2 ways to get haste. But, yeah, so that was game number 2. All right, now do you remember who the commander pods were? Whoop, not this one. All right, so Animar won the first pod. Second pod was won by Sharoom. Third pod was won by our vampire friends. So vampires beat dragons and cats. Surak beat Centriplets and Missouri. Zur beat Gisela and Wart. And Kalia beat the Scarab God and Ashling. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to game number 3. For our pods, we had Animar versus Centriplets versus Gisela. Tajik versus Nazan and versus Ashling was pod 2. Pod 3 was the Scare God versus Edgar Markov versus Thrax. Pod 4 was Kalia versus Azuri versus Sharoom. Pod 5 was the Ur Dragon versus Wart versus Alicia. And Pod 6 was Zur the Enchanter versus the Ur Dragon versus Sirach. All right. So again, game starts fairly calm, mostly just lands for the first two turns. Uh, Gisela went first. She played the Tormod's Crypt. Nobody else played anything on turn two. It's turn three that things started to go downhill. Um, Apparently, our lovely Gisela player kept the one land hand so that he could keep the Torpor Orb that was in his hand. So he finally got that second land. Played Torpor Orb, which is 2 mana for an artifact that says creatures entering the battlefield don't cause abilities to trigger. Now, this is a terrible card for me because Animar is all about enter the battlefield triggers. And my only way of destroying artifacts in that deck is an enter the battlefield trigger. So I have no way of getting rid of this Torpor Orb other than killing the player. So Send Triplets was ramping out, playing a Darksteel Ingot, which is 3 mana for an indestructible artifact that taps for any color. I played Animar, hoping I can get enough creatures, enough counters on it. Now, fortunately, Animar's trigger is a cast trigger, so he'll get the counters on him. But all my other effects are enter the battlefield effects. So I was really hoping I could do something about it. So because there's nothing else in play other than Animar, so I knew that I needed to be swinging. So moving on to turn 4, Thran Dynamo was what was played by our Sentry Triplet, so he's just ramping. I played Sakashima the Imposter, which is one of my favorite cards in all of Magic. It's 2 blue for a 3/1 legendary creature human rogue that comes into play as a copy of something, but it keeps the name Sakashima the Imposter, which lets you copy your own legendary creatures. So it came in as a copy of Animar. The only difference is that you can pay 2 and 2 blue to bounce it to your hand at the end of the turn. It's not a very good evasion, but it's not bad if you want to just flicker it ish. But more importantly, right now it's an Animar, so every time I cast a creature spell, I get 2 +1/+2 counters. Unfortunately, the Send Triplets player did not like that, so he ramped out again with the Dreamstone Hedron, which is 6 mana for an artifact that taps for 3 mana, and then you can pay 3, tap it, sack it to draw 3 cards. He then played Day of Judgment, which is 2 white for a sorcery that destroys all creatures. I don't blame him. 2 Animars in the field at the same time are pretty brutal. So this is turn 5. I was able to recast Animar, but that was all I was able to do. Turn 6, our poor Giselle player still not doing anything. He was completely relying on that Torpor Orb to keep me out of the game. And to be fair, it did. It pretty much kept me out of the game. Our Send Triplets player continued to ramp out. Did he play anything else other than Board Wipes and ramp? Obelisk of Esper, which is 3 mana for an artifact that taps for Esper colors. Then he played Scour Glass, which is 3 white for an artifact that has tap, sacrifice Scour Glass, destroy all permanents except for artifacts and lands, and you can only use this ability during your upkeep. So he had an explosion just sitting there waiting for an excuse. I then responded with playing Bident of Thassa, which is 2 blue for a legendary enchantment artifact. So this is something that would survive the Scour Glass. Whenever a creature I control deals combat damage to a player, I may draw a card. And for 1 a blue and tap, I can have creatures target player controls attack this turn if able. So my poor Animar is only a 1/1 because I still haven't played any other creatures. So I'm poking at the Giselle player. I need to kill him because I need to kill the orb. Because the orb's not even going to go away with if the Scour Glass blows. The only thing that's going to die is Animar. Okay, so moving on. Turn 7, finally getting some more creatures on the field. Send Triplets is played by the Send Triplets Commander. I play Shaman of the Great Hunt again. So now I've got 6 damage that I'm throwing at the Torpor Orb player, but it's just not enough. Because 6 damage is not that much in Commander. Here we are, turn 8. Finally, our poor Giselle player is able to play something. He plays Iroaz, God of Victory, which is 2, a red and a white for a 7/4 legendary enchantment creature god with indestructible. Unfortunately for him, it's not a creature unless he's got 7 devotion to red and white. Which this is the only thing he's played, so he has 2 devotion. So it's not going to stop me, but it's not going to let me do anything either. Now, the rest of the text doesn't matter, but I'm going to go ahead and read it anyway. It's creatures you control have menace, and then prevent all damage that will be dealt to attacking creatures you control. Um, Not a lot said here. He didn't have anything to use it on. He's hoping to get something online. I'm only swinging for 6. I'm not doing much. Um, at this point, yeah, I was pretty much out of the game. I had 6 damage. Our Centripetus player is getting ready to just steal my hand every turn. At the end of the Giselle player's turn, the Centripetus players played Sphinx's Revelation, which is 2 blue, a white, and X for an instant that says you gain X life and draw X cards. So he already ramped a ton, and though he just drew a bunch of cards, he then played Foundry Inspector, which is 3 mana for a 3/2 artifact creature construct that says artifact spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Now, this is turn 8, and I can pretty much do nothing. All of my abilities rely on enter the battlefield effects. I could maybe have cast a creature and then hope to get something out, but with the Scour Glass out, I was pretty much hopeless. So I think at this point I knew the Centripetus player had it, and I actually stopped taking notes because there was no point. I was out of that game. I did not realize that Torpil Orb would wreck my poor Animar deck that bad. Oh, it was brutal. So I pretty much just gave up at that point. Um, I mean, I didn't give up. I kept playing, but I knew I wasn't going to win. It was just a matter of time till Sun Triplets won. And in the end, he won. All right, so that was a terrible game for me. I still tried. I wasn't going to give up, but I got hammered in that game with a single artifact. So hopefully people just don't play that again. But I think Animar's done for a while anyway. I've been building a bunch of new decks to try and play out. I built a mill deck that I'm eager to try. This next week, I'm going to play Captain Sisay again because she's still my favorite deck. I think I'm going to keep her in rotation, but I'm going to add a couple more decks and see how they do. All right, so for those of you who are paying attention, Stenship is won Pod 1. Tajik beat Nazan and Ashling. The Thrax beat the Scarab God and Edgar. Kalia beat Azuri and Sharum. The Ur-Dragon beat Wart and Alicia. And Zur beat the other Ur-Dragon and Sirach. All right, everybody. I hope you had a great time. I had a great time playing Magic. I love this game. Love playing every week in my local game store. I love talking about the game. I enjoy seeing how everybody builds the decks. It's nice to see the new Commander decks coming out. I'm waiting for mine in the mail. I ordered 2 sets. One that I'm going to hold on for some friends, and one that I'm going to pull apart and build some decks out of. Hopefully, you get to see those soon. Let me know what you think about the video. Hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Let me know how I can make it better. What'll make this more entertaining for you. If there are any decks you want me to try out, let me know those too in the comments below. Anyway, thank you for stopping by and hope you had a great time.